Member Warshaw, could we have him come in? Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. We were in closed session. We had a hefty agenda, and we were a few minutes late getting down here. But I think what we'll do is start. We're waiting for some materials for a presentation. So if we need to, we'll defer that for a few minutes until those materials get here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's December 17th, and this is a regular City Council meeting. Let me first off say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah to everybody that's here today. In the spirit of Christmas, I hope we have a nice meeting. We will start tonight with our invocation and followed by our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Mike Spence. For our invocation, I'd like to call forward Pastor Grace Wabuki, the pastor at Faith Community Church. Please rise.
Let us pray. Lord, I thank you for this beautiful city of West Covina. I thank you for the privilege to be able to live here, the opportunity to be able to work here, and the honor to be able to serve in this wonderful city. I thank you, Lord, for our leadership. I thank you, Lord, for Mayor Herford, Mayor Pro Tem Frederick Sykes, Council Members Mike Spence, Council Member James Toma, and Council Member Corey Warshaw. I thank you, Lord, for their leadership. I pray that you would give them wisdom in the decisions that need to be made here today. I also thank you, Lord, for our law enforcement, our firemen, men and women who serve so faithfully to keep us safe in this city. I thank you for our many volunteers who give of their time and energy to make this city a safe and beautiful place for all of us to live and work. And so I just pray your blessing upon each person here and for this meeting. I pray for wisdom and for direction and for your will to be done. And it's in Jesus' name that everyone said, amen.
City Clerk, can we have roll call?
Mayor Herford.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sykes.
Here.
Councilman Spence. Councilmember Toma. Here. Councilmember Warshaw.
Here.
Thank you. City Attorney, we have a report out of closed session.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, and members of the successor agency. The record should reflect the City Council and the successor agency convened tonight for two special meetings for each of those two bodies. That prior to recessing into closed session, the items that were listed on the agenda were announced for discussion in the closed session. That public testimony was provided by 4 individuals. That the council and the successor agency recessed into closed session, and I'll provide my report at this time. Under the successor agency, there were one item under conference with legal counsel and existing litigation. These are the various matters relating to the Hassan Import Partnership litigation. The record should reflect that all 5 members of the successor agency were present in closed session. Presentation and discussion was held by the successor agency. There was no action taken. However, the matter has not concluded this evening, and I believe at the conclusion of my reports on the 2 special meetings that there will be a motion to recess and adjourn these meetings to Thursday, December 19th at 5 p.m. Moving on to the item of conference with legal counsel existing litigation and conference with legal counsel anticipated litigation, one matter. The existing litigation dealt with the successor agency versus Montesantos. The record should reflect that successor agency member Toma recused himself from participation inasmuch as he is employed with the California Attorney General's office, and that the Attorney General of the state of California is representing the various parties on these matters of both existing and anticipated litigation. So the balance of the 4 members of the successor agency received a briefing on these 2 items. There was no action taken, however, on either of these 2 items, and there's nothing further to report. Moving on to the special meeting of the City Council. First item was conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. This involved the West Covina Improvement Association matters. That matter was not discussed this evening. This matter will also be held over to your meeting of December 19th if the matters, this special meeting is continued to that time. Moving on to conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. Also, as indicated, that matter was not concluded this evening and will be held over to the special meeting of December the 19th. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, the Espinoza versus City of West Covina matter. All 5 members were present. Direction was provided to legal counsel on this matter, but there was no final settlement or resolution at this time, and there is nothing further to report. Moving on to conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. This is the successor agency versus Montesantos, the corresponding matter from the successor agency. The record should reflect that Councilmember Toma recused himself for the same reason that I stated earlier, that the 4 members of the City Council did receive a briefing on this matter, but there was no final action taken, and there's nothing further to report. Under conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, the Coalition for Land Use Equity versus City of West Covina, all 5 members were present. There was no action, final action, I should say, taken on this matter. Direction was provided to the City Attorney's Office with respect to this matter, but inasmuch as there was no final action, there is nothing further to report. Under conference with labor negotiators, all 5 members were also present with respect to the position of the police chief. Direction was provided to the city manager with a 4-to-1 position, with the mayor opposing that position. However, there was no final action taken. This matter will come back to you at open session at a future meeting. Finally, under conference with real property negotiators, the property located at 2100 East Shadow Oak, that matter will also be held over to the special meeting of December 19th. So at this time, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report from closed session. It would be appropriate to entertain a motion, first for the successor agency, to entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's special meeting to an adjourned special meeting to be held on Thursday, December 19th at 5 p.m. in the City Manager's Conference Room.
Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that meeting will be Thursday at 5 p.m.
And now moving on to the special meeting of the City Council, we would need a motion also to continue the various items I did delineate to an adjourned special meeting of the West Covina City Council for Thursday, December 19th at 5 p.m. in the City Manager's Conference Room.
Do we have a motion? So moved. Moved and second by Sykes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
And that concludes the report from closed session.
Okay, thank you. City Manager, do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
No, we do not have any changes to the agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you. We have a presentation tonight. I'm not sure if we have them, the materials yet, do we?
Let's go. We'll go ahead.
Go ahead and do it? Okay. Councilman Warshaw is going to come forward to the dais and make a presentation to some shop officers, volunteers, seniors helping our police is the correct term, to the service department, and their recognition for their service to the community. Councilmember Warshaw is a member of the shop program. I don't know if you was a member. Okay, so he's retired, but he asked if he could do that, and I said, sure, it would be great.
And I do want to thank our mayor for allowing me to do this. Normally the mayor would make the presentations, but as I mentioned, or as the mayor mentioned, I was a shop member for about 4.5 years, rewarding experience. Would have liked to stay, but it's hard to do both. But our shop program has been around since 1991. Chief, if you would like to come down and help me with this. And while he's coming down, just a little bit more about SHOP. Started in 1991. It started where you had to be 55 to become a volunteer. And the job of SHOP is to keep our police officers on the street helping the citizenry. And so what all of our volunteers, the ones you see in uniform tonight, do is they devote a lot of hours to helping our police department. And there are some awards for some people who have retired and some people who have done other things, and I've asked the chief to help me with this. Our first award is Joan Goudreau. Would you like to give that to her? Yeah. The
This is in recognition of 13 years of volunteer service to the shop, senior helping our police program, and the city of West Covina. I got to tell you, this is one of our favorites, and it's very sad to see her go. But she's done so much for our police department, and we all love her, and we will miss her a lot. And thank you for your service.
Just because I'm a troublemaker, you'll miss
Yeah, I
me.
know.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
She is feisty. I'll give you that.
Thank you. Thank you again, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah. We have one individual who actually is in the hospital tonight, so we won't be able to present to him, but Floyd Kroll, who just retired, and so we wanted to make sure that he also got recognized, and we hope he's out of the hospital soon. Someone else who retired from our shop program, 19 years with our shop program. Howard, where are you? Oh, there you are.
As for Mr. Leach, you know, he's been a part of our program almost since the beginning, maybe one of our founding members, but you know what? There's a few people that are just part of the foundation of a program, and the shop program has been so important to the department. And Howard, I just want to thank you for all your years of service. 19 years, that's a career in anybody's book, so thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
And we have a special award for someone who's actually completed 20 years of service with the shop volunteer program and is still an active member. Billy, come on up. This is Billy Menegal. Billy.
Okay, if you can tell that I like working with our Sharp Volunteer Program, you've guessed correctly. But you know, it's for people like Billy who've just contributed so much to the department. And Billy, 20 years, that's just fantastic. Thank you so much for your work. Yeah, there are. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Billy. And this last person hasn't been in for 20 years, but has contributed over 10,000 hours of service to the shop program. And so we definitely want to recognize him tonight. Bob Munoz.
I got to tell you, this guy here, he comes into work every day and he means it. You know what? I mean, he's here on time. He doesn't leave until his hours are up, even though he's a volunteer. He treats this like a serious job, and he's been very serious about helping the department. And Bob, I don't know how to thank you enough for 10,000 hours worth of work, but we sure appreciate it.
More to come.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Everybody back up for one picture. Howard?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Oh.
So while we're setting up for the picture here, combined, ladies and gentlemen, up here with me, over 30,000 hours of service to the city of West Covina. Incredible.
And just to let you know, there'll be another award for each of you that I think will be given out at this next shop meeting. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Warshaw and Chief. Appreciate that. Okay, we've now come to the oral communications portion of our meeting. If you'll please, when you step to the podium, give your name and city of origin, and we limit you to 5 minutes per speaker so that we have enough time for everybody to speak. So with that, I think most of our speakers are regulars, so they know the rules. But first speaker tonight will be Paul Hernandez. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. There you go.
My name is Paul Hernandez. I'm the newly elected board member of the Valley County Water District. I wanted to come here this evening to extend my friendship and hopefully build a new partnership moving forward. As you know, the Valley County Water District serves a portion of your city, along with Irwindale, Azusa, and Baldwin Park. I'm here as a friend. Moving forward, what I like to do is, in the future, come back and share with you some of the policies and some of the impacts that perhaps the Valley County Water District might have on some of your constituents. And in the meantime, also, I'd like to also offer, should you have any constituent issues, feel free to contact me. You could do so by reaching out to the Valley County Water District, and be more than happy to help assist our constituents in any issues that they may be having with the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. William Elliott.
Good evening. My name is William Elliott. Mr. Mayor, gentlemen of the City Council, thank you for allowing me this forum to assert my First Amendment privilege. Last council meeting, I spoke regarding the Second Amendment and concealed carry in West Covina. I worked very hard on my 5-minute speech, and I learned a lot of lessons from the experience. I don't have a lot of experience in public speaking, and it's harder than it looks, even if it's only 5 minutes. I'm naturally a little bit loud, but that's what happens when you grow up in a house with deaf people. And I tend to be very passionate about what I believe in, and I apologize if it seemed like I was yelling. I also want to thank the kind, benevolent soul who approached me after last council meeting and pointed out that I might consider wearing a suit and a tie the next time I decided to address the council, because people might be more receptive to what I have to say if I'm not dressed like a slob. So here I am, dressed more appropriately, and here we go. In my heart, the first order of business before this body will, on my agenda will always be the God-given right of self-protection. And I always want to address the stranglehold that the City Council has on that right of the citizens of West Covina. I will be speaking much more on the subject in the future, building support and shedding light on the policies that deny concealed carry by law-abiding citizens of this city, and to learn each City Council's respective positions on that issue. And until then, I'd like to make some observations, but first I have a word of advice for the newly sworn-in City Council members. While you're serving as City Council members of West Covina, please do not start a company and name it after yourself and call yourself a consultant, the Mike Spence Company, the James Toma Company, the Corey Warshaw Company, and then seek to do business with clients that are already clients of the city. West Covina already had a very clever city council person that did that, and I think it dragged the city through the mud, and he would have been better off slinging pizzas, milk, and eggs. Please don't do that. I'm so happy that that fat cap brand of leadership is over and that era is past in West Covina. We can hopefully move forward. The other thing I want to talk about is where's the little girl? I know 2 years ago this viral video hit on YouTube and really shed a lot of negative light on the city of West Covina and how the city is run and who's really in charge. And I know a lot of people don't want to revisit this issue, but I want to know. And I called the city clerk and I asked, can you tell me what you can tell me about the Where's the Little Girl video, and what was the fallout, and what was the repercussions, and what happened, basically. They told me they're going to call me back, and they did not. Instead, I got a call from the police department, which I think is really inappropriate since this is a police department scandal. To have the police department report on a police department scandal is unthinkable in most communities, but apparently that's fine here. I want to know. I want to know what happened. I want to know what the result was. I want to know if there was discipline. I want to know if there was prosecution. And if there wasn't, why was there not? People took police cars, active duty commissioned police cars from this police department. They took police uniforms. Maybe they even took firearms from the department. We do know that filming took place on city streets without a permit by people in West Covina police uniforms who were not West Covina police officers, who were driving West Covina police cars. Guns were drawn, some would say brandished, on city streets, and no one seemed to know what was even going on. And like I said, I know a lot of people don't want to revisit this issue, but I want to know. And so when I got the contact back from the police department, they basically told me, well, we can't tell you very much, and those people don't work for the city anymore. Well, I don't accept that. There's a lot more to be known about this issue than what the police department is willing to say. And I want to get to the bottom of it, and the people deserve to know. And I want to remind everybody of the T word that all the candidates, used at some point during the last election, transparency. The people deserve to know. And also, how is this new police chief going to deal with this kind of situation if it arises again? And should that be a question that should be inquired of him, should be asked of him in the hiring process? Finally, I just want to remind everyone that the Second Amendment is so important to not only to our nation but to our city. Please stand up for the rights of the people that voted you into office. Make West Covina a shall-issue city. God bless America, and let freedom ring, even in West Covina. Thank you.
George Ogden? No applause, please. This is a meeting, so.
Good evening, members of City Council, staff. Excuse my voice. I won't be here long. I wanted to visit a little bit on the issue of the dealership down the road there, and we've had a lot going on for many years. Arnold Glassman here has had many hours in it working hard trying to make resolutions happen, and I could just imagine how much staff time has been used and some of the frustration all the way around, and I appreciate everything that he has done. But, I have to sit back sometimes and I have to take a good look at this and see maybe we're looking at this auto dealership issue in the wrong direction. We've been working this for a long time as a civil issue, and maybe we should be entertaining the idea that it is actually a criminal issue. It appears that we may have issues with the corporate conspiracy, with possibility of fraud, possibility of funds that have been misappropriated and or embezzled, mainly from the city. And there may be tax evasion issues as well. All this stuff needs to be looked at, and if there's an answer there, maybe we can find it and then move forward with it. To me, it seems like there's a pattern that has been shown from one city to the next and regarding to the same issues. Another question is the bankruptcy issues. And, after all that happened, it comes out that we only find out that he had enough money to make good on his own debts because he bought back that property, or at least bid on it to do it. With some of the latest actions of the dealership operatives, it may show a pattern of an intent to where it may be more than enough probable cause to submit these actions to the district attorney's office in hopes that they may move to the grand juries for their evaluation. And within the criminal court system, there would be an element to right or wrong. Okay, whereas they can impose penalties, possibly jail time, fines, orders of restitution, and any other judgments that may need to come before it. With this criminal judicial evaluation, this could benefit both sides. It could show culpability to those that are responsible for these actions, as well as clear those that may not. And maybe we should take a look at this and put our trust in the criminal court system to assist us with the recovery that we need here in the city so much. Thank you.
Thank you. George Shirley Buchanan.
Shirley Buchanan. I've lived in West Covina since 1956. Good evening, Mayor Herford, Mayor Pro Tem Sykes, and congratulations to the new council members for your spectacular campaign. It showed the public exactly what you stand for on the many issues facing this city. After the campaign, I spent some time remembering about the city council meetings I have attended over the 10-plus years, where the residents spoke time after time asking about a particular expenditure and the financial health of our city. Because we seldom got the information, we continued to request it, and very often with no results. We, the residents, are entitled to know exactly how our tax dollars are being spent without waiting for the final budget. I respectfully request that you give your approval for the staff in the budget office to prepare a list of the voucher expenditures for that particular council meeting period to be listed in the agenda. The residents can see who, what, and how much was spent. Transparency can start there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Shoemaker.
John Shoemaker, West Covina, for those of you who don't know me. I kind of have to agree with George. I know he's probably going to mark this down and go, what? John agreed with me on something? But, maybe if a grand jury or something looked into the dealings in our city and with that specific item and how it got to where it's going, it might be very good for the city to find out just exactly what happened. Why it got to the point it did, who caused it, how it was caused, and was there any activity that maybe the public should be very aware from? So I think it's a good idea. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and Shirley briefly touched on it, was the idea of, I'm not sure if she knows, because she said she's been coming for 10 years, I believe about 2000, is when the city stopped publishing the check register every month. It used to be part of the package that the city council received, and they used to approve it. The thing I noticed is when they got rid of showing it publicly, we started a lot of deficit spending after that. I don't know if it was just coincidental or whatever the case may be, but I think, putting something like that back to where it used to be, I even think the school board does it. There's vouchers or something to show what's being spent, who's spending it, and the approval. So I think that would be something that would answer a lot of questions, the public, and also save staff a lot of time, people having to call and ask what's going on and those types of things. You'd actually be able to see it. Because I remember there were times I attended meetings when I was looking at some of these things, and I'd ask specific questions at the meeting. Hey, what is this $10,392 that we paid to United Airlines for? And somebody would get back saying, well, city council went on a trip, and that was the cost of da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh, okay, fine, thank you. It saved a lot of time. So I think that would be one of the easiest things to do. Since, anybody who works in a finance department or has worked in finance knows that somebody, when they sign the checks, is looking at a check register, at least, of who they're paying, what account it's going to, and why it's there. Why not just run off a few more copies and publish it and put it up on the website or publish it as part of this and actually have the council once again look at it and say, yeah, let's pay these things. So hopefully you'll go back to that process again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ira Stellmayer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We heard a lot about transparency during the election. And either yesterday's or today's Tribune, city pays out $900,000 to settle the developer. And that developer was the people who wanted to build the medical building there. One thing that's been going on for way too long in West Covina is that by the time we find out something, it's already a done deal. We may come up here and speak about it, but everybody's already made up their minds. And in this particular instance, I don't know whether it was the city who approached the developer or vice versa. But the first thing that went wrong was the city attorney did not inform the council that they couldn't sell this property unless they first offered it to other governmental agencies, which was not done. That was the start of total failure to communicate with the residents of West Covina. First time I knew about it, I came off the freeway and I read a sign that says, "Units for sale," a big sign. And I'm thinking, how did this happen? I don't remember any of this going on. Well, sure enough, nothing had gone on except between the council members and the developers, which gave them some type of assurance that they could go ahead and spend the money because it was going to be a done deal. And it turned out not to be a done deal. And I think that when somebody approaches the city council about a particular piece of property and the zoning of it, we should be informed. It should be on the web page. Channel 3 is a place to advertise to go look at the web page. You need to slow down the scrolling. By the time you read the four lines, it's turned the page. So it would need to be more obvious on there so that people would know what's happening in the city and what projects are coming up, why we think we're going to do this, and what's it going to cost us. And I would really like to see transparency, totally transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Art.
Good evening, Mayor Steve, council members. We're here to talk about the Hill, obviously. I just heard about it. And you are here because of the Hill, some of you. I was very, very disappointed to read in the newspaper what had been rumored that $900,000 had been given to Miss Lee. And we know exactly why that happened, and we know it happened on election night. It happened because her attorney, Mr. Dragella, wanted to know who is responsible for her being offered that civic center land. What did they promise, and what could they not perform or give? That's exactly what that was all about. What I am asking respectfully from you, and all of our taxpayers deserve to know, how much money did that hill cost? 2 years. You have the court case of the West Covina Improvement Association to pay for because you lost that case. And our attorney is being paid $525 billable hour. I have no clue how many hours he worked. That's a lot of money. You also have Alvarez Glassman to pay, and perhaps the 2 attorneys that were in court on Halloween of 2012. So I would like an accounting, a respectable accounting. We're here about transparency. It needs to start tonight. And staff needs to be given that task of pulling together the exact amount. I'm sure we'll be overwhelmed with that number. And I hope we can afford it. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil Marino.
My name is Phil Marino, and I've been a resident of the city since 1979. I'd like to thank every one of the council members for giving me the time to make this presentation, members of the city staff, and members of the audience. You have in front of you 3 separate documents. The first one is the minutes of the meeting of the City Council dated November the 20th, 2007. You will notice resolutions 2007-78 and resolution 2007-79. Those were resolutions to give supplemental retirements to city staff members. Here is the second item that you have is the city staff report to those 2 resolutions. I've turned the page to page 2 of the staff report, and I want to read it. Tier 2 provides an increased retirement benefit to the city manager consistent with the terms of his contract. This Tier 2 plan will convert the retirement formula for all years of prior CalPERS service at non-West Covina agencies. A supplemental retirement plan given to a city manager for all the years he didn't work for West Covina? Mr. Herford, you were on the council at that time, and you and 4 other members of this city council voted for this. Who advocates for the taxpayer? And why do we have to pay a city manager for all the years he didn't work for West Covina? And the answer is, in these resolutions, sir, you also gave yourself and the other council members supplemental retirement plans. You'll notice the fiscal impact at the bottom says, the retirement plans will need to be budgeted to various general funds, special revenue, and CDC accounts. That's redevelopment dollars with the general fund portion, and they make a statement. And now here's the Department of Finance letter back to the city of West Covina to Ms. McKay, the finance director. It's dated November 14th, 2013. If you go down to item number 52, the ROPS list, redevelopment obligation retirement funds reserves in the amount of $1,453,446 is not an enforceable obligation. Finance continues to deny this item. Only enforceable obligations are defined. Now, since the original idea of paying for a supplemental retirement plan was going to come from redevelopment dollars, and you say you have a balanced budget, since the Department of Finance told you that you cannot pay for those supplemental retirement funds out of redevelopment dollars, is that coming out of the general fund now? In the first ROPS list, Mike Gregorian from the Mount San Antonio College Board asked a question of Andrew Pazmat in this council chambers on a Thursday at 4 p.m. And his first question was, in your first ROPS list, there's a legal bill of $500,000. In your second ROPS list from July through December of the first year of providing redevelopment money, you show $600,000 in legal fees. Since the Department of Finance said you did not have documentation. Now, how do you lose the documentation that this attorney's billing the city? If Alvarez Glassman is billing the city, what do you mean you don't have the documentation? Finance will allow us to pay for litigation if we can provide the documentation. They don't deny that. Other cities are getting their legal fees paid. What are we hiding? And here is the last one. If Andrew Pazmat was asked a question, this $500,000 in one 6-month ROPS list and $600,000 in the next, that's $1.1 million. What caught Mike Gregorian off guard is he sits on 3 other cities' oversight boards, and he had never seen numbers like that. He asks Andrew Pazmat, were those fees paid? And Andrew Pazmat said, yes. He said, it didn't come from redevelopment dollars. How were those fees paid? And he said, through the city's general fund. Here's supplemental retirement plans. I need the city council members to ask a question. Why did he appoint somebody not on this council to the oversight board? Every part of this city is run by appointments to other governmental agencies. You're part of the sanitation board. Anybody that this city has represented, they said a city council member. Gee, Mayor, can you explain to me why you didn't appoint another council member to the oversight board? And what makes the man that you appointed so special that none of these other people were appointed to that body? It's a fair question. Now, gentlemen, If you can tell me why we need supplemental retirement plans, the taxpayers would like to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Lloyd Johnson. No applause, no applause. This is a meeting. We're not going to make it into a pep rally. I did appoint the city clerk, who is an elected official, Nick Lewis, to the Redevelopment Advisory Board. So, Lloyd Johnson? Yeah.
Good evening. Lloyd Johnson, resident of West Covina for over 40 years. Mayor Herford, council members. I would like to say congratulations to our new council members. As residents, we must get behind them and give them our support and trust they will get our city moving in the right direction. Everyone knows how I feel about the litigation that has been going way too long with the car dealerships. It needs to stop now, not next week or a month from now. What justification is it for keeping throwing thousands and thousands of our tax dollars away on something that we will never recover the financial loss that it has cost us so far? This is a circumstance where the good of the many outweighs the good of the few. The many are the residents of West Covina. The few are the attorneys, the only ones who wins in this situation. Councilmember Sykes said in the newspaper about settling the lawsuit over the Civic Center, it was better to stop the constant flow of legal costs. If you feel that way about saving our city legal costs, that's great. Now let's stop the legal costs to the dealerships and save our city thousands and thousands of legal costs of our hard-earned tax dollars. As residents, we are looking towards the new majority of this council to make those decisions that were made by the former council to be corrected. As residents, we are also looking at our new council to end the moratorium on the property in South Hills. We have been told how much property taxes will be generated when these homes will be built. So the question is, are you going to remove the moratorium so these homes can be built? My other suggestion is it is time to move in a different direction with a new city attorney. A city attorney should be looking out for the best interests of our city. And like I said for quite a while, I believe we haven't been getting that advice from our current city attorney. You know, there's a lot on the council's plate you need to start to clean house and undo all the bad decisions the past council did. This will take time. Everyone should understand nothing happens overnight. What we need to see is that you are moving in the right direction, which will get our city healthy again. There were a lot of issues I talked about while I was campaigning. Some of them I mentioned tonight. What I hope is all the issues I spoke about will be corrected. So in the 2 years when the next election comes around, there will be different issues for us to talk about to the residents while we're campaigning. I also would like to see transparency on all spending on litigation when it has nothing to do with further spending. When a resident asks for information about how much it has been spent on an issue, up to that point, we shouldn't have to file a lawsuit to get the information we are allowed to under the Freedom of Information Act. I would hope this new council feels the information, if the information isn't a real legal issue, not just because the city attorney wants to release it, you will agree it is important to let everyone know you aren't hiding anything. Too many things have been hidden for too long. We are looking for a change. Good luck to our new council members. We are looking towards seeing you make some changes in a positive way. We hope the other two council members see it as a new day with a new agenda. It's called transparency. I know Councilmember Sykes feels that way. I hope Mayor Herford feels that way too. As I look at this council, I see for the first time in a long time 5 independent thinkers. So I say to you, good luck, I wish you well, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Thank you. Herb Redholz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you and to the council. Herb Redholz, over 25 years in the great city of West Covina. In keeping with the theme of transparency and information, Mr. Mayor, perhaps the city attorney could respond to this query that I have. I would like an explanation of the protocols as it relates to reporting out from closed session. We heard tonight, and we usually hear, that there was no action taken, and therefore there's nothing to report. We know that a couple of weeks ago there were action items on the closed session agenda. And my question is, and perhaps it can be explained so we all understand, other than adjournment, if there is a motion and a second and a vote, even if it's to do nothing, even if it's simply to continue it, table it, or do nothing, is that not an action that should and could be reported to the public along with the vote of the council members? I think the public, that's what we're talking about here tonight, is as things go along, we don't find out what's going on until it's done and it's too late for action, because things are done in closed session and we don't know what's been done or where people are at on this, so we could even address it to the council. I think it would be in the spirit of transformation and keeping the public informed as to if an action was taken. I don't realize there's no final action, but we've seen over the past that there is no such thing as final action. You know, things end up in court, things end up revisited. It happens all the time. So that is my question. Perhaps the city attorney can address that. And depending on that answer, I would be curious to know what is the governing directive behind it, as far as what can and cannot be reported out to the public. Is it council direction? Is it Brown Act? State law? I don't know. But I'd appreciate hearing that answer so we can keep the public informed and keep the spirit and promise of transparency that we all want. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have the city attorney answer that after the oral communications. Scott Tranzu?
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Scott Transu. I'm with Southland Transit. I'm the vice president and chief operating officer. Southland Transit is a locally based firm. We have an office here in West Covina. I'm here to speak about agenda item number 13. Wanted to just give a little bit of background on the history and some information about our firm and the services that we provide for the city of West Covina. We've operated on your behalf since 2001. We took over the operation from a larger competitor at that time and made several improvements to scheduling and operational practices, which resulted in a cost savings for the city compared to what we had originally budgeted, because we were able to boost up the ridership and the passengers per hour from a lower number of about 2.0 to about 3.5 currently, which has saved the city valuable funds. Conversely, we've been operating the services for the city of West Covina for the past 4 years without a contract. In this time, we've lost about $100,000 annually, recognizing that there were some tough budget times with the city over the last 4 years. We absorbed that hit within the company in hopes that there would be a contract award or a renegotiation due to in good faith. So here we are now. When you get to item 13, our bid is higher than the recommended bidder. But that bid amount is the amount that it would cost to run the service. As the current operator since 2001, we know what it takes to run the service. We can't bid lower than what it would take to operate the service and make some sort of money on it. So that's kind of why I wanted to explain that a little bit. The main reason our bid is higher is because we have an experienced workforce. As I said, a local office in West Covina. We have many drivers here today. If you could stand up. And dispatchers. These folks have been with the service since 2001. They know the area, they know the service, they know the passengers. They've done a great job for the city. They have not had a raise in 4 years because we have not had any kind of rate increase. We would like to give them a rate increase, so our bid also did factor in some of that as well. To kind of put it into context, nothing against the recommended bidder for this award, but they're kind of like a Walmart compared to us, which is a local company that pays maybe more of a living wage for these individuals, and that's why our bid is a little bit higher. Conversely, I understand that the city used a consultant to review this proposal. but I just wanted to make mention that under the Federal Transit Administration guidelines, you do not have to select the lowest bidder. They recognize that that might not necessarily be the correct bidder. So I'd just like to make sure that, we're all aware of that what they do is they allow you to make a decision based on a variety of factors, which comes into play or takes into account experience of staff, the operation, the firm, and the familiarity with the service area. I ask that you look at the stability that our team provides. We provided 2 full-time road supervisors and a full-time project manager as outlined in the proposal. I seriously doubt at the rate or the amount that is being recommended that the recommended bidder has done so. I just don't see how the numbers would play out that way. As I said, I'd ask that you look at our history, the fact that we've lost over $100,000 in the last 4 years, and that we provide a good local experienced workforce with no turnover. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Jeanette Flyler?
Hello, my name is Jeanette Fleeler, and I work for the company of Southland Transit that he was just from. I've been with this company for 14 years, and out of my 14 years, I've been with West Covina for 9 of those years. I've watched it rise and fall. This isn't just a job for me. I'm speaking from the heart. This is a family. We're close-knit with our workers. We're close-knit with our passengers. We don't want to go. And we hope that you take that into consideration. We've worked very hard. The contract itself, we've worked with the city very closely. We love the city. We love the people. And at one point when we had to cut service, that was very hard for everyone, the service, the people in general, because they could no longer travel on Saturdays and things like that. But, I mean, they still love us, and we love them, and we want to stay with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Rivera?
Good evening. My name is Patricia Rivera. I also work for Southland Transit. I've been an employee for the last 6 years, and as my co-employee, Jeanette, I've grown to love this family, and I've also grown to love West Covina. I don't live in the city, but it's a great city. It's a very beautiful city, and it has a lot of beautiful residents. This company provides a lot of service to people who won't be able to go out there on their own for dialysis, for disabled individuals. Our dispatchers are very good with the people. They try to accommodate. They know the city. They know the residents, so they always try to help them out as much as they can. I've been a driver for the first time in my life. I love driving. I love this going around the city and helping out and, just giving service to everyone. This company is a very good company. Like I said, we haven't had a race in many years, and it's not so much about the money. It's about working together and having a connection with the company, a connection with the residents of West Covina, and it's a beautiful place to work. And I really enjoy working here. If you would, consider something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. William Tennies?
I have been a citizen of this city since '56, and I really enjoy it. However, I have also been a member of the military for over 20 years, and in the 20 years I've raised my hand 8 times to re-enlist to uphold the Constitution of the United States, as every elected official, whether it be city, state, county, or federal, has raised their hand to defend the Constitution. The Constitution would not be of any effect without the Bill of Rights. And without the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights, the other 9 amendments have no effect. I would like this city to uphold the Constitution of the United States by upholding the citizens' rights to defend themselves, because the police department cannot respond within 3 seconds of my being assaulted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes oral communications. A couple of items to address. First off, on the check register, I'm not sure if we still get that or not. I know we don't get the check register, but we get the treasurer's report. So is there any problem with doing the check register?
I don't believe there is, but let me get back to you on that
Okay.
issue. I do know it was stopped as a practice many years ago. Possibly, I don't know what the exact reasons are, but we can look into that.
Okay. You could bring us a report on that. And then, sure, Councilmember Spence.
Nowadays, too, it's not hard to post it. Nowadays, it's not hard to post that kind of thing online so people can search it. And, there are some governmentalities where they have an interactive database, but at a minimum, we should be able to search, or the public should be able to search the PDFs, and they can search for whatever they wanted. I know other governmentalities have done that as well. So when we do the website redesign, that might be something to add to that.
Absolutely, and that's a good recommendation.
Okay, and then the second one I have is the city attorney on reporting out of closed session. We actually discussed that tonight, so
Yes.
appreciate you giving your input.
Yes, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. From closed session, there is a provision where reports of action that is taken in closed session must be reported. That is governed by the Brown Act, by the Government Code, specifically Section 54957.1, which delineates the various times in which a action that is taken in closed session must be reported out for the public's knowledge. Oftentimes in matters of litigation or matters of negotiation for property acquisition or sale, there is direction that is provided, and that direction is not required under the Brown Act to be reported unless there's a final action or final agreement. The reason for that, quite candidly, is the philosophy behind the reports from closed session, because if the city was required to report out of its strategies in litigation or its negotiations on property items, what could occur is that the opposite side would have an advantage over the city. So it's an attempt to try and bring parity and balance between the city and a private agency with private parties. Now, I should also note, however, when action is final, as defined by the Government Code, the city has always taken the position, and I can proudly state that in the 13 years that I've been here as the city attorney, we have always adhered to that rule and never been sued for failing to report action from closed session. So we will adhere to the mandates of the Brown Act. Transparency is defined by the client, and the prior city council composition had issues with respect to what should and shouldn't be released on Public Records Act matters. But as it relates to the requirements of the Brown Act, I can state the city has always adhered to that. We will always adhere to that. If the city wishes to release more information than is what is required by the Brown Act, we certainly will follow that direction from our client.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Spence.
Would it be possible for our next meeting to agendize some of those litigations dealing with public record requests and freedom of information stuff, and see if we want to change the direction of that at our next meeting? Okay,
We will.
possible?
That's the direction we will.
That'll be
do
in
so.
January, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if I could
Yeah.
just make a quick comment. There was a comment on the moratorium ending that. I just want to point that it is on item 12 here tonight, that if approved would come back for a second reading in January, and I believe 30 days after that, the moratorium would be no longer in effect. So I just want to point that out, that it is on tonight's agenda.
Correct, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Warshaw.
There was a question by Mr. Moreno about the ROPS expenditure. Can either council or city manager answer that on the litigation, or is that still?
Mr. Mayor, if I may address that in part,
let's explain what ROPS is, because
Okay, sure.
I think most people don't know.
Right. Let me probably even go one step back further. The state legislature several years ago adopted and approved AB 1X26 and AB 1X27, which resulted in the abolishment of redevelopment agencies. A lawsuit was filed by the League of California Cities and by the California Redevelopment Association. It was heard by the California Supreme Court, wherein the Supreme Court determined that the law that abolished or unwound redevelopment agencies was determined to be held constitutional. That was AB 1X26. And the law that allowed for redevelopment agencies to buy back in, or what was commonly being used, the term back then as paying a ransom, was declared to be unconstitutional. So that led to a process whereby the former redevelopment agencies turned into what's called a successor agency. A successor agency now exists in any community where a former redevelopment or community development commission existed. As a requirement of that process, now successor agencies have to file a recognized obligation payment schedule. That's what's called a ROPS, a recognized obligation payment schedule, every 6 months. And that is submitted first to the successor agency, which is the City Council, then on to the Oversight Board, which is comprised of appointments by various taxing agencies, including the city, to the Oversight Board, and they will then approve the ROPS, or the recognized obligation payment schedule. It should be noted that as to each of those items that DOF has determined they are not going to recognize as a recognized ROP, not only did the successor agency as the City Council and also the Oversight Board, they approved all of those items in addition to other items. The litigation projections are those for litigation matters that are being handled by Squire Sanders on the Alhassan matters and other possible litigation matters, and then also your day-to-day administrative legal advice, and also cost of the Oversight Board legal counsel. So it is an estimate of what is anticipated to be a obligation to the successor agency for the 6 months ahead. Dealing specifically with the ROPS of the retirement fund, and I may need some assistance from our finance director, maybe even if the city manager is aware. You find that the Department of Finance in many instances is declining to recognize these as a matter of course for not just the city of West Covina but throughout the state of California. It is not the connection of the item that was approved on the supplemental benefit is not specifically what is dealt with here on the ROPS Redevelopment Obligation Retirement Fund. So we're talking apples and oranges, and we can get a complete and detailed report for the City Council if you wish to have one. I should also note, however, that not only the City of West Covina, but many other communities in the state of California are currently engaged in litigation with the Department of Finance because of their stance that the Department of Finance has taken with respect to recognizing or not recognizing items on various ROPS for either the City of West Covina or throughout the state. I'll be happy to address any questions. Maybe Mr. Chen can assist in that.
Yeah, I also want to add on a couple points. First of all, after DOF provides us with a letter, if they deny anything and request additional information, we do what is called a meet and confer, where we either go up to Sacramento and meet with them, or we could do a conference call, and we can present them the exact same information we sent them before. You know, a lot of times they say they don't have enough information, they didn't get enough information, but we provide them with the same information over and over and over again, but they just kind of typically take unless you really pinpoint it out, they'll say that information is not provided. So with respect to and I think we need to remember too that the whole purpose of elimination of redevelopment was to help balance the state's budget. So they are trying to take away as much money as they can from the local governments in order to balance their budgets, and they do that by offsetting the funds that they're supposed to be paying towards schools. And so what we have and what the purpose of the ROPS is really to protect the city of West Covina, to make those payments of debt and other obligations that under the law that they wrote, we are legally entitled for it to be paid from there. And retirement was specifically indicated in there that was approved expenditures, but DOF has in fact denied this one here. So what we present in the ROPS is, and this, I don't have all the information here in front of me because I wasn't prepared for this, but we present the information to the City Council as a successor agency and to the Oversight Board to support all the documentation as far as what we're presenting. They ask many questions, the Council asks many questions, and we project out what that expenditure would be. In a lot of cases too, where we may have expended more in one ROP period, well, we're able to make that up in the next following ROPS period. So that's why in some amounts, it fluctuates, and we try to recover those amounts. Now, DOF, I believe, is still reviewing these items that we have in place, and depending upon that, then we would probably come back to the City Council or the city as a successor agency to get further guidance on those issues.
Okay, Councilman Warshaw, is that okay? Okay. With that, no more comments or questions. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anybody need an item pulled from the consent calendar? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I motion to approve the consent calendar.
Motion by Sykes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Toma. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Can I get a 5-minute break for this one?
Okay, Councilmember Spence would like a 5-minute break, so we're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, thank you.
That's a retirement issue. That's the...
Oh.
Basically a square here that is or was Dove Daycare. The subject property is located in an urbanized area and is approximately 0.5 miles south of Interstate 10. The site is bounded by the Walnut Creek Wash, single-family homes and a church, which is the South Hills Church of Christ to the north, single-family and multiple-family residences to the east, single-family residence to the south and to the west. The proposal consists of the following entitlements. Zone change from single-family residential to specific plan number 26 that would provide building design and development standards to govern the development. This entitlement requires the approval by the City Council tonight. Secondly, a tentative tract map to subdivide the 5.7-acre site into 56 lots, which are 45 single-family lots and 6 common area lots for streets and open spaces. The proposed lots range from 2,805 square feet to 9,657 square feet. and a tree removal permit to remove a California sycamore and 2 other trees within the front setback that are defined as significant trees in the municipal code. The tentative track map and the tree removal permit were approved by the Planning Commission on October 26, 2013. No appeals were filed, so those applications are not before the City Council this evening for review. The subject property is triangular in shape with frontage and a road access on Lark Ellen Avenue. The proposed project would be a gated development. Access to the lots within the subdivision would be provided through a network of private streets with access to Lark Ellen. The main private street would continue through the project, curve around the proposed park site, and continue to the east end of the project site with spurs providing access to the lots along the route. A cul-de-sac would be provided near the east end of the project site and would provide a vehicle turnaround sufficient for fire safety. Also, the security gates have been designed also meeting fire safety and other standards. The 20-foot wide private street within the development will accommodate up to 24 on-street parking spaces throughout the site. Those are not parallel parking spaces, but rather banks of parking lots through here and here where vehicles would park perpendicular to the street. A 7,700 square foot open space area is located in the center of the site and includes a play structure, barbecue grills, picnic tables, and shade structures in an open turf area. And that is this area right here. A decorative perimeter wall will be constructed along Lark Ellen Avenue. The wall will be a stucco block wall that will be 6 feet in height. The project includes a 6-foot tall solid vinyl fence along all interior side yards and along the southern boundary of the development. And along the northern boundary of the development, abutting the Walnut Creek Wash, a 3-foot tall combination it's a 6-foot tall combination decorative stucco block wall and vinyl fence would be proposed. So 3 foot of 3 foot of stucco block wall and 3 foot of open vinyl fence above that. Again, that is along the northern boundary along the wash, which is in this area. Landscape areas are included in the development, and these include the common area that I was pointed out before in the center of the lot, a 15-foot wide landscape area to soften the wall along Lark Ellen Avenue, so here, a landscape median at the entry here, a hedge along the southeasterly portion of the property abutting some of the lots of the far east end to provide some privacy to the single-family lots behind. So that's in this area here. And hedges in other areas where screening is appropriate, such as adjacent to the open space and on either side of the entry driveway. So what I'm talking about here is here and places like here. A condition of approval has been included requiring that the HOA ensure that the proposed trees throughout the site are preserved and maintained, and a final landscape and irrigation plan is required as a condition of approval of the tract map. The applicant is proposing what's called a reciprocal use easements, which we've seen 2 different times in the last couple of years with other developments. So the applicant is proposing a 4-foot side yard setback as a standard in a specific plan, and has designed the development with an 8-foot building separation utilizing the perceived zero lot line concept. I'm going to read through that and then I'll try to describe what's behind me. In the proposed development, 7 of the proposed lots include at least a 5-foot or greater side yard. So 7 of the lots out of the 45 have more or less a standard 5-foot setback. The remaining houses are therefore separated by 8 feet. This 8-foot separation would be utilized with opposing property granting easement rights. This concept allows for homes to be constructed so that the eaves extend over the perceived property lines. The location of the walls will give the impression that there is a zero lot line between the properties. However, the actual property line will be the midpoint between the 2 units. So just for sake of discussion, what you see before us here, this is the property line, and the easement of this property would grant easement rights to this property, and so a fence would be constructed here. So from all intents and purposes, this area will be utilized by this lot number 3. Lot number 1 would utilize this, and so on. This side yard setback design is part of the proposed specific plan under consideration in the zone change. Therefore, the City Council can approve the proposed side yard setback utilizing the perceived zero lot line concept by approving the zone change from the current single-family use to the specific plan. Talk about the floor plans of the units now. This is the ground floor. There's 3 different types of units that are proposed. The dwelling units would all be 2-story and range from 2,097 square feet to 2,470 square feet. Each unit provides 4 parking spaces, 2 in the garage and 2 in the driveway. In addition, a refuse area will be provided within the garage to store trash containers for each unit. That's something we haven't seen in West Covina for a while, but basically that's this area here. It's kind of a little notch out in the garage that allows them to put their trash cans within the garage. The project proposes 3 floor plans. The first floor includes an entry area, living room, bathroom, dining room, and kitchen. A den is proposed for units 2 and 3. This is the second floor plans for each unit, 1, 2, and 3. The second floors include master bedrooms with a bathroom, 2 additional bedrooms, and an additional bathroom and a laundry room. The applicant is proposing 2 different types of architectural styles, the first one being the Spanish architecture, and they're proposing each of the 3 floor plans in that style. So a total of 6 different styles of houses that are being proposed, 3 floor plans, 2 different elevation types. The exterior elevations of the Spanish architecture will consist of sand-finished stucco. The buildings would feature architectural details such as Spanish-style clay piping, decorative wrought iron railings on the second story, quatrefoil details, and window shutters to break up the mass and provide a more interesting design. The roof materials for the Spanish style would be concrete barrel tile. There's 3, so I'm just going to kind of pan through. This is Plan 2 and then Plan 3. So 3 different elevations for the Spanish style. California style, the front elevation will incorporate sand-finished stucco, stone fascia, hardy plank siding, which is looks like wood, and stucco or wood trim around the windows. In addition, the front elevation provides a small front porch or covered entry area, and the roof materials for this style would be flat composite tile. If you recall the site plan, or actually the aerial, along the southern property line is the area where this lot is most closely adjacent to existing houses. So they're adjacent. The southern property line here is adjacent to the rear yards of existing houses on Larkwood. The proposal therefore includes enhanced privacy features for all the homes along that property line. The applicant has designed the site elevation on each home facing the southerly property line with ornamental opaque fixed windows or wood louvered panel shutters to provide a greater privacy for the houses and the rear yard areas for the houses on Larkwood. So this is the Spanish style enhanced elevation along that southerly property line, and these are the examples of the California architecture along that southerly property line. Go back to the site plan for a few minutes here. I want to talk about the environmental determination. In terms of the environmental determination, a mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact has been prepared. The mitigated negative declaration indicates that the project will not have a significant effect on the environment. Mitigation measures have been incorporated into the project's design and as conditions of approval to reduce impacts on the environment to a less than significant level. These mitigation measures are provided in the staff report in attachment 1. Legal notices were published in the San Gabriel Valley Tribune, City Hall, and posted at normal places and mailed to 224 owners and occupants of those properties within 300 feet of the site. Written comments were received prior to the Planning Commission meeting stating concerns that the St. Martha's Church building is historically significant. An historic resource evaluation report was completed as part of the mitigated negative declaration prior to comments being raised. The report concluded that none of the buildings on the site are eligible for historic status. The city also completed a survey of historic resources in 2006 and did not list any structures on either of the two properties as eligible at that time. Following the receipt of the comments at the Planning Commission meeting, the historic resource consultant provided a response, which is also provided for you as attachment 10 in your report tonight. A traffic study was prepared as part of the environmental review. 7 intersections were analyzed in the study. The study concludes that the proposed project will not create any traffic impacts. The project was reviewed by the Planning Commission on October 22nd, 2013. During that public hearing, opponents of the project stated their concerns regarding the density of the project, reducing the number of units to blend into the neighborhood better, increased traffic impacts, traffic conditions at Service and Lark Ellen, and a preference for single-story houses to preserve existing views, and the opinion that the church building was a historical resource. The Planning Commission discussed the project layout, circulation, and comments received. At the conclusion of the hearing, the Commission voted 4-0, with Commissioner Holtz being absent, to approve the tentative track map and tree removal permit, as well as to recommend approval of the zone change and mitigated negative declaration to the City Council. The primary reason cited by the Planning Commission for approving the project was improvement to the area and that the project was well designed. We do have what's called an errata document for you tonight as attachment 11, and that is being provided to you to correct some mistakes in the mitigated negative declaration as it regards to the storm drain. The document currently states or makes the misstatement that the proposed drainage would drain into the Walnut Creek Channel, when in actuality it will drain into Lark Ellen Avenue. And so that is being done just to clarify that misstatement. In conclusion, the subject property has been utilized for religious purposes and as a daycare for several decades. The subject property is primarily surrounded by single-family residences and a church. The site is adjacent on the easterly property line with multifamily development. The use that is most compatible with the surrounding uses is therefore a single-family residential use. The proposed project is in compliance with the general plan land use designation and density, and that's why there is no general plan amendment before you tonight. The general plan allows for a density of up to 8 units per acre. The proposed development as designed would not comply with the current zoning standards, which allow for 4.6 dwelling units per acre. Therefore, the applicant is proposing a zone change from single-family residential to specific plan, allowing lots to be developed with smaller lot sizes. The applicant has designed the residential units to reduce privacy impacts to the neighboring properties by providing landscape buffers and opaque windows on the second story, windows in specific locations. The applicant is providing common open space areas for the benefit of the project residents. Lastly, the applicant is providing 4.5 parking spaces per unit. While the proposal for the subject property will be different than the previous use of the site, the proposed single-family development is consistent and compatible with the surrounding uses. Planning Commission did recommend to the City Council approval of zone change 1303 and the certification of the mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact. And just in closing, we did receive 2 correspondence, one late this afternoon from the LA Conservancy, which I believe is before you on the dais, and I believe one yesterday from the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles, which I believe is also on the dais. That concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Jeff, if you can also address 3 questions, if you wouldn't mind, please. First question is the school impact fees. How are those calculated and where are those derived from? The second question is about public safety impact fees. And the third question is with respect to the development standards and the design of the project, how are they mitigating potential graffiti impacts on the project on a long-term basis?
I'm sorry, I'm writing things down while you... Public safety impact fees?
Yes. And the first one was school fees, second was public safety fees, and the third question had to do with respect with graffiti.
School fees are not a subject for the city. Those are a subject for the school district. So this is in the West Covina Unified School District. They do have school fees. I don't have the numbers before me tonight to know what those school fees are, but they are required to be paid prior to building permits being issued. So there are school fees. They will have to be paid. They will have to be paid before any construction would begin. Public safety impact fee, we don't have one. There hasn't been one established over the years in West Covina. We did have some discussions at a staff level recently. I'm not aware of that ever being brought up as a council discussion or even previous to this summer, any discussion about whether that was appropriate to establish public safety impact fees. And as far as graffiti, what we generally try to do, and this is probably a good graphic to have up. What we generally try to do for graffiti purposes on walls is we try to provide a landscape area. So there will be a wall here about 15 feet back from the property line, and we'll require there to be vines on those walls and some hedges in front of the walls to reduce the ability to for any graffiti to occur ever. Along this property line, there shouldn't be any issue because you're up against a fence of neighboring residential properties. So this location is probably the one where we might have some issues, and perhaps some on the inside, which would obviously be taken care of by the homeowners association is formed when this project is constructed. Along this northern property line, as I covered in my report, there is a 6-foot wall that's 3 foot of stuccoed block wall and 3 foot of open vinyl fencing. So I believe one of the reasons that was done is to allow for visibility here, so this doesn't become a corridor where it's kind of invisible and blocked off so no one can see what's going on there. From these backyards and from probably the first story and the second story windows, those residents would be able to see in that area and hopefully be able to report any kind of suspicious activity that might be occurring back there. There is also a condition in the track map that requires the HOA to clean up graffiti that occurs promptly. So that's what's currently in the track map condition.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any questions by the council?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Warshaw.
I have a question on the errata that you talked about with the private storm drain system draining into Lark Ellen. Now, I know there's been talk about making sure that we eliminate as much as possible runoff into our storms. Can you comment on that? And number two, is this running into the street or running directly into the storm drain when it reaches Lark Ellen? And number three, when it talks about doing a cleanup prior to, what is involved in that? Does that take away any pesticides from lawns or anything of that nature?
I can probably answer the first one fairly. There's a lot of acronyms, and I apologize. I don't know what they stand for. We have SUSUMP, and then we have MPDES. That's discharge requirements, and they'll be required to follow those. So this misstatement has nothing to do with the requirement to follow the SUSUMP and the MPDES. So the misstatement was simply an error in the understanding about where the drainage was going to occur. It might be something that the applicant or I'm not sure if the Public Works Director would want to respond to how it's going to drain, or the applicant. I don't have that information right in front of me, how it's going to drain.
So you don't know if it's draining into the street or directly into the storm drain?
I do not.
Well, I believe it indicates discharges onto Lark Ellen Avenue, and on-site flows shall be treated prior to discharging from the site.
And so my question, because that seems like a lot of flow going right onto the street, which didn't previously occur. Analysis, I imagine, must have been done to make sure that we're not putting too much water in there. It's not going to tax the system.
And that's the purpose for the SUSUMP and the MPDES. They're required there's a certain amount of outflow that has to remain on site or to percolate into the ground on site before it's supposed to flow out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Spence.
Well, I just have I guess a comment, and that has to deal with the historical significance of St. Martha's. And, you know, having grown up here in West Covina, and obviously I wasn't here when it was built, or I wasn't born, and obviously I wasn't tracking in elementary school. But as an adult, you know, the importance, historical significance to West Covina in my mind was always the people that went to St. Martha's. St. Martha's was a church that produced mayors, lots of community people. You couldn't get elected without the Smiths being on board. I mean, there are a lot of people there, and I would just like to suggest to the development company, if you have to name streets in there, to look at some of the people that are no longer with us that provided a lot of community service and a lot of help to building this city as a way of recognizing them for their service. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions by the council? Let me just chime in on that too. There was a lot of historical campaign forums that were also at St. Martha's. I can remember full houses of people during elections, so it was a very interesting time in the early 90s and late 90s. With that, if there's no more questions or comments, we'll move on to the public comment portion of the public hearing. We do have the 2 letters that are entered into the record, as Mr. Anderson said. I don't have a card from the applicant. I didn't know if the applicant wanted to come up and speak. Yes, okay. Please come forward. State your name.
Good evening, Mayor Herford, Mayor Pro Tem Sykes, City Council, City staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Phil Becerra. I'm from Warmington Residential. I'd like to start off by congratulating the newest members of the council, Councilmember Warshaw, Councilmember Toma, and Councilmember Spence. I'm very excited that this project is in front of you this evening. We began at the beginning of the year when we first met with your planning staff. Throughout the process, they have proven to be very professional, knowledgeable, and responsive. In April, we held a community meeting where we received some really great input from the community, and we did our best to incorporate it into our project. After working with your staff over the last couple of months, your staff recommended approval of this project. In November, as staff has stated, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of this project to you, the council. And now that we are here before you, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Jason Fitch from JZMK. The architects at JZMK have put together the following presentation of what the built environment of the project will look like.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As Phil mentioned, we've put together an animation which we would like to show you to help enhance the understanding of the project from a three-dimensional point of view. We've done a quick fly-through, and I think we just hit this. There you go. And this shows the overall site, of which you've gotten a comprehensive report from staff as of tonight. This shows coming in the gated entry. You can see that with the fence on the left and the right, or the wall on the left and the right, the vines that would be planted on that wall, helping to mitigate some of the concerns regarding graffiti. The entry opens up and it terminates on a central park, or a small pocket park, which is the sort of the heart of the neighborhood. Some of the design principles that we've employed on this plan is really the enhancement of the public realm, separating the sidewalk from the street, getting street trees between the sidewalk and the street for enhanced aesthetics and also for actually safety for the pedestrian realm. The other component is with the architecture itself. Trying to emphasize front doors, entrances, de-emphasis of garages, and then articulation of the mass of the architecture itself, and providing enough variety within the character of the home styles. So now we're flying through, again, sort of the neighborhoods, and then the camera will pick up and give you an overall. This is looking to the south, the fence that's there. One of the things that we did on the south elevation is we've sided on those homes to that sensitive edge. That does a number of things. Particularly, it reduces the number of homes that are on that edge. So as opposed to backing up homes where you would have a steady rhythm of homes, and this shows the Central Park, we've broken that up by siding those homes on. And that'll show you here. So there are breaks. So you have a home, you have the alley or the roadway, and that breaks it up. As discussed, the south elevations will be modified to enhance privacy on that elevation. And then again, we have larger setbacks, average of about 15.5 feet. In some areas, that would be some of the tighter setbacks, and then even larger in some of the other areas, or 15 feet. No, this is the view. This is to the south, the residence to the south. And then against the northern property line. So you can see this is what we did not do on the south in terms of lining those homes up, again, to create that break. That gives you an overall, hopefully a better understanding of the plan itself. And I'm also available for any questions that you might have.
And I'd like to conclude that along with Jason, we also have our civil engineer, our historic consultant, and our environmental consultant all available for any questions that the council may have.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the public comment portion. First speaker, Ray Amantorp.
Members of the council, it's great to be here in this great city of West Covina, and sorry to say that I, as a longtime member at St. Martha's, am sad to see it go as a church, but there were great people there. It was mentioned tonight that we've had many community leaders come through that church. I have dealt briefly with some of the Warmington people. I find them very accommodating, and I certainly would recommend that this project be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie Dunn.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. If you just give me a little patience. I ran a preschool for a number of years, and we had a pigeon that was terrorizing two of our little boys, plucking hair out of their head for 2 days. And it was actually a shop member and a box and a towel that actually fixed the situation. So nobody from the police department, fire department, or animal services could do anything about the pigeon. But we got a shop member that was like, that is not happening. And so she took care of it. It was great. Dove Day School has moved to San Dimas. I got a phone call in February that said that we would, be looking at having this type of use for the property, and I immediately began looking at what I could do for my staff and my children. And we've found a home in San Dimas, just 10 minutes down the road, and we actually have more room. Looking at that site plan, those first 6 houses, that's all we had for 120 people, about 115 students, and 20 staff members at any given time. So yeah, about 125 people. We were pretty much locked in, and that was it. That's all we could do. About St. Martha's, all of us were a little bit better off in the 90s, weren't we? So we watched St. Martha's become a bit of a repair, kind of sucking the life out of the pastor there. We are very happy in our location. All of my employees are still working for me. Most of the students have moved with us. Of course, you always lose some students because they grow older. What do you do? So we are continuing that, and that site is working with the city of San Dimas to turn it into a Dove Day school. So San Dimas is a different town to work for, to work with. I have to say I miss West Covina in a lot of ways, in doing business, working with the fire department, working with the police department and different services. It's just, it's very, very different. One of the things that people have spoken to me about and said they're very concerned about traffic. And one of the things I want to point out is that the traffic numbers that you are going to be getting, I think were done in like May. Well, we were there in May. And that's 100 people dropping off their children, 1 or 2 children, and leaving in the morning, and then 100 people coming back at the end of the day and driving up and driving away. Now, anyone who's been to schools, that's a dense amount of traffic. really kind of crazy and hairy. Well, I don't know that those 45 homes, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mathematician either, so I can't tell you what actually would happen, but I think we're probably actually much more peaceful around there with just homes and not a school. And then when St. Martha's was really going, boy, Sunday afternoon, you couldn't even there was no such thing as a left turn. Don't even do it. Don't do it. Just make a right turn and figure it out. So I think that we're probably looking at a much more peaceful traffic situation. The property is, I moved. I now live in, I was told I have to tell you where I live. I live in Long Beach. I was trying to stay on the property because we didn't want anything to be dangerous there, and because with Wicks getting leveled, there's a bunch of people that needed homes that used to live at Wicks. So they moved to St. Martha's. And I said, it's getting really creepy around here. And Warmington, as they said, what if we put somebody there? And so they made it so that I didn't need to stay there anymore. And they put a fence around it, and they have somebody there keeping it safe. And so I was allowed to move because people do live there. They're not paying taxes and they're not driving cars. So I didn't want to be there anymore. Please, these homes are going to be beautiful in West Covina, and West Covina deserves to have them. I want to say that Warmington is a neighborhood that I have relatives that live in a Warmington neighborhood, and they have a park like that at the end of their street, and we take children to that park all the time, and they enjoy it, and it's a part of the neighborhood and well used. Thank you very much for your time. It's been my pleasure.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask
Thank
a
you.
question?
Yeah, Councilmember Warshaw.
Jackie, can you tell me what were the hours and what was the pickup time, and what time did the parents, or drop-off time, and what time did they pick them up?
We open at 6 in the morning, and presumably everybody's all in class by 9. So yeah, about 9:30. But really the big part of it was all 8 o'clock, because 8 o'clock to 8:30 was the drop-off for the elementary school. And so that was like the big push, people running in the door, get in there, I'll sign you in on finding a parking place, that type of thing. And then in the afternoon, the same type of thing. But the most children we ever had piling out of a car was 2, maybe 3 when the Wongs were there. We just didn't have, it was no school bus. It was car after car, and those people park. They come in, they sign out their child, and then they leave. And they're not going to the store. They're getting back on the freeway. So they're driving back through these neighborhoods and getting back onto their commute. So those pathways were being well used for 50 years, or since 1965, I should say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sue Dunn.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be back in West Covina. I've been gone a while. My husband and I own the property at 502 and have owned Dove Day School, and St. Martha's and Dove Day grew old together. We watched that church, the congregation begin to struggle with keeping it up, keeping it beautiful. I'm in awe of the work. They worked and worked and worked over there, but it got ahead of them. And at Dove Day School, that building was beginning to worry us. We knew that it was going to be needing some major repairs. Warmington, as far as I was concerned, is a lifesaver, number one. And also, you know what? It's time for those 2 old people to move on and let some young people move in and have beautiful homes. I have to tell you, where I live right now, we drive past our house, we keep forgetting where it is. They're cookie cutter, they all look alike. I mean, it's the truth. My sister bought me a sunflower to put on my house so we could find it. These houses, they're beautiful, they're all different. I am so impressed with this, and I urge you to approve it and get that ugly fence away from what's up there now, those 2 old ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Good to see you again. Ted Forbath.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ted Forbath. I'm the CFO of the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles. With your permission, I'd like to read the letter that Bishop Bruno provided the Planning Commission also has been entered into the record. If that's okay with you. Thank you. The impetus behind closing St. Martha's came from the congregation, from people who for many years realized they could not make necessary repairs, expected to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's actually a low figure given my numbers, including seismic safety measures as well as fund ongoing ministry. The congregation also decided it was time to reunite with the congregation from which they came, Holy Trinity, which is located 2.9 miles away. The two congregations have now very collegially and productively become one, intent upon service and ministry in the community. Yours in Christ, John Bruno. So in sum, supporting the project will provide service and ministry in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our speakers in favor. We have one speaker that's neutral, and that's David Schwartz. David?
Good evening. My name is David Schwartz. As of today, I've lived in West Covina for 53 years and 2 days, and I've seen this community grow. I remember it from the 60s. I'm not necessarily in favor or against this development, but I believe that West Covina can't keep on building without some kind of responsibility. I worry that with the 45 homes in this development, which are beautiful, and I'm sure they will enhance the area, but I'm nervous because right down Service Avenue at Valinda, you have 19 homes going in over there, and now you're tearing down the old Wicks on Glendora, on South Glendora Avenue, wanting to put up retail, and I think I heard 450 condominiums. I believe, not only myself, but many people who live in the area believe, so I speak for many people, that the infrastructure in West Covina cannot handle the traffic and the basic infrastructure can't handle everything else that all these developments are going to need. I spoke on this 2 months ago I think 1 month ago in November when this was brought up. And since then, Mr. Yachi called me and we discussed, we were probably on the phone for about 45 minutes discussing some of the options that we possibly have, like improvements on Lark Ellen Avenue, changing lane striping and so on and so forth, and maybe getting rid of some left turn pockets and that kind of stuff. I also suggested that back in the 60s there used to be an off-ramp off the eastbound San Bernardino Freeway that got off right at Glendora Avenue. And probably about a decade ago, and I see that Councilman Spence is agreeing with me because he remembers it as well, that there was an off-ramp off the eastbound 10 freeway going directly into the West Covina Mall. Both of those are gone right now. It puts so much traffic onto Vincent Avenue and Lark Ellen and Glendora and West Covina Parkway that it's basically bottlenecked, especially now at Christmas time. I'm also apprehensive that until the city of West Covina shows good faith that they're going to do some kind of infrastructure upgrade, that building these communities, not just this one, but the other two as well, I think the total of the three of them is very dangerous for such a concentrated area in West Covina right now. And I think until West Covina shows good faith that they're going to do some infrastructure upgrades such as the traffic control and contacting the state, and I think Mr. Yoxie told me that they tried doing that before and they're against putting off-ramps on the freeway because they say it doesn't meet with current code, and yet I look everything from Holt Avenue going westbound to Grand to Barranca to Citrus to Azusa, the off-ramps are very close. You got traffic merging on as well as off, and I don't see a high volume of accidents there that I see at any other off-ramp. And I think the city of West Covina needs to go into renegotiations with the state to get off-ramps, maybe back at Glendora again, at least for eastbound traffic, so that they can get off and people can get on there. and I think also into the mall again. When the state widens the freeway, I think it's a good opportunity to add these off-ramps. It is just way too congested. I think that the impact studies that were done, I have to admit I didn't read all of them, but I've tried to skim through them. I think they're fatally flawed. I think the harm that's going to do to our neighborhoods, overtax our infrastructure, and overburden our already gridlocked streets and freeways is just going to get worse if we allow all three of these developments to go ahead. I think the city of West Covina does need to expand, but with smart growth. We fear, the people that have told me, I'm the only one who's speaking, but people have told me, we fear that the resulting growth would gnarl notoriously bad traffic and destroy views for those of us that live in the area, with this 5-story building that's going up at Wicks, and with the neighbors or the people that live on Larkwood.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, speaker seated there 5 minutes.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. It says in the rules that on open hearing like this, you get up to a half hour. So I'm sorry. I should only be about another minute.
Okay, thank you.
That's going to destroy the views. Furthermore, I think the neighborhood does not have the proper infrastructure to support the increase in population. Therefore, I ask that you guys suspend your decision to approve any further permitting on any 3 of these projects until the city of West Covina shows a good faith in improvements to the numerous traffic infrastructure issues. And these 2 other ones that just were brought up today about the drainage of the rain on Lark Ellen, it floods out frequently on strong rains as it is, and now that you're taking away lots of grass at the church and behind Doveday School, the water is not going to penetrate. You're replacing it with asphalt and concrete. It's just going to flow out onto Lark Ellen. And if it's not going directly into the storm drain that it's set up for, Walnut Creek Wash, it's going to flood out Lark Ellen, and it's going to even be worse traffic. I love Jackie and her mom with Doveday School, but I think they're a little biased because they got paid for their properties and they're moving out. They don't have to deal with it. I think when you bring in 45 homes and you bring in about 200 people, and I think Mr. Yatsi told me about, they figure out about 10 trips a day, you're talking 4,500 people going in and out of these gates. That's more than 120 people at Doveday School. Also, I don't think the city is prepared for this, because if you just go down that bike path that was on the picture there, it is filled with graffiti, filled with human and animal feces. And if we can't control a 4-foot patch, how are we going to take care of the rest of our neighborhood? I think you have to really think, if you're going to approve this project, then don't approve the Wicks, and don't approve, well, the 19 are already being built. You guys got to do something first before any new development is done in these areas. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I will allow rebuttal on that, so if the applicant would like to come forward.
Mr. Mayor, just are there speaker cards in opposition to the project?
No, I don't have any in opposition.
So that's the last speaker. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. I'd like to just let the council know what I had said earlier. Our engineer is available for any questions as far as the runoff. I know Councilmember Warshaw had expressed some questions and concerns, and I don't know if you'd like him to come up to the podium.
Especially after the last comments, if possible, to answer those questions.
And while you're up, can you, excuse me, while you're up, can you address the issue of the naming of the streets internally?
Well, Councilmember Spence, I thought that was a great idea. We'd be open to it, and we'd be ready to work with city staff to figure out the process for doing that. And I figure the council would probably want to explore which names to include. I mean, there's not too many streets in the development, so that's a decision we'd welcome from you guys.
Obviously, I think like Ray and the Duns could give you a good list of names. I could think of some too, but obviously I think that's something that can be worked out.
Definitely. Well, thank you for the idea. Here's our engineer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
council members, city staff, and audience. My name is Rami Awad with B&E Engineers. I'm a civil engineer on this project. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions regarding the drainage of the site. The project has been designed in accordance with the current and requirements of all drainage laws, and that includes the state requirements for the low-impact development and the MS4, and that's part of the stormwater pollution prevention plan and the SUSAM. And basically what the new projects are required is three things: to maintain and keep the same drainage pattern before development and the after development be the same, and also to retain some of the stormwater on the site, so there is no more additional drainage being discharged into the street or outside the project after the development takes place. And this is accomplished by, we have a percolation area where we actually filter the water and percolate it into the ground, and that's in accordance with the MS4, that's a state requirement for the permit, storm permit. And also we have filters that will actually biofilter the water before it gets into the ground and out onto Lark Ellen Street. Currently the site drains onto the street, Lark Ellen, and it goes to the south and west and goes through the local streets until it gets into the wash. And we are going to maintain the same drainage pattern.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will close the, or, sorry, do you want to say some more?
No, just if there's any other questions.
Any other questions by the council? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the public hearing. Now ask for council discussion. Anybody wish to? Councilmember Sykes.
Mayor Herford, thank you, sir. To Wilmington, I would like to say thank you. I was there when we had the meeting with the public at the Dove Daycare Center, and I like that approach because that's been one of the big complaints here in West Covina, is that people feel left out of how things come about. And I want to appreciate, extend my appreciation and say thank you for approaching the situation that way. Change is not easy, and we talked about a long, rich history that facility and that area has provided for the city. But nevertheless, with time and use, sometimes we do have to make adjustments to that situation. And then also tonight, the city manager and staff, they answered some questions that I didn't think about at the day of the original meeting at Dove Daycare. But once I saw the photos and the diagrams, it made it clear to me about in particular, the graffiti situation that could come about, and that was addressed. I also was concerned about the fees and how that was provided for the school and not for the taxpayers in regards to the public safety impact. We're going to have to work on that going forward. That we will definitely put that on the agenda. And with that having been said, I do support the project. It's modern, and I have frequented the area on my bicycle, and I have walked it. I have visited the Dove Daycare Center when it's in business and when it wasn't in business. And so with this coming forward, I think it'll be welcomed. I did talk to some of the residents, and I believe by what you see today in a way of there was not a protest, because they had said, okay, we know we need something. This is going to help beautify it. It's going to help enhance our property. And I definitely look for that as being one of the issues that we decided on, is what the residents, people that live there, especially since I live about 6 miles away. And so I do support this project. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Councilmember Toma?
I would echo some of the things that Councilman Sykes said. I appreciate that Warmington Residential sort of went out of their way to talk to a lot of the residents. They seem to be very friendly and accommodating. I know that with any change, there's bound to be some inconvenience to some people, and they attempted to accommodate those changes as much as possible. I'm sure not everybody's happy about it, but I think that was a good thing that they did. It's an attractive design. I appreciate it. I like the fact that there's it seems to be sufficient parking, and it seems like a very good project to me.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sykes. I'm Vince. Boy, I'm. Go ahead.
I didn't think that would be the mistake, but okay. Because I have hair, that's why. But yeah, I too think it is a good project. I understand where Mr. Schwartz is coming from. I do think there are infrastructure needs in the city that need to be addressed for all residents. You know, when you look at this project, when you look at what's there now, where you have an unofficial, unregulated homeless shelter, you know, which is really what's there. And if we don't approve a project or find some way to deal with it, you know, the people that live on Larkwood will benefit from having, I think, this kind of project behind it rather than what's there now. And of course, you know, sentimentality, you think of St. Martha's and all that it provided, and provided spiritual shelter for a lot of people, but it's time to have, you know, shelter for these families, and they'll be providing that in these single family homes. You know, it's not a big apartment complex. It's not a big, you know, complex in that sense. It's really a classy project. And I think the city will be better off in the long run for having that. And so I'll be supporting the project.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Warshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first found out about the project actually from some residents on Larkwood, and found out that there was a meeting that Warmington was going to have with the residents, and I want to thank Warmington for that. Some developers do that, some don't. I've seen a lot of Warmington projects, and seen homes they've done, and I think they do an excellent job. As far as building in the city, let's face it, things are going to change in West Covina. Some things this council or the city staff can do, some things they can't. One of the things that we can't do is force the state to change the freeway system, and they're not going to do it. I think everyone's aware of that, and hopefully Mr. Yahtzee was able to explain that. Just as we're having problems right now with the off-ramps and what they want to do on Vincent, the city's fighting them, and we've gone to court. It's costing us money, but we're trying to do something on that. There's a lot about this project. When I first saw it, I thought there were some problems. One was, anyone who knows, when I was on Planning Commission, I'm a biggie on parking. And I told them they needed more parking, and they did that. This is a project that also allows an area where the people can go to, they can barbecue, they've got a place for kids to play, it's in the middle, it's not right next to the homes. I like that. I like the way they've done most of the homes. However, with that being said, one of the things that I had brought up the first time was the views of the people from Larkwood. Developers, and frankly, I don't think Warmington is any different than any other developer, wants to maximize profits. And I can't blame them for that. That's what a business is supposed to do. But one of the things I need to do is think about residents. And over the time that this has been going on, I've talked to residents, and they're still concerned about views. I think you've taken care of some of that, and I appreciate that. But there are 8 units, 8 homes along Larkwood that I think it should have been 1 unit, and maybe the way to do that, or excuse me, 1 story, and one of the ways to do that would have been taken each of the 2 homes next to it, make it into 1 home, make it 1 story. It would have lessened some traffic impact. It would have made some 1-story homes. It would have given the views for all of the people. And I think it would have been a better project. For that reason and that reason alone, I am against this project.
Okay. This is a project that I too went to the community meeting. I listened to the residents and appreciate the applicant meeting with the people on site. I think that the benefits outweigh the negatives on this. The property is tired. Something's going to happen there. If it's not this project, it'll be something else in the future. To address the concerns about overdevelopment, that's always a concern. And when you take one project and you look at it individually, it's a lot different than taking three together, which I understand, Mr. Schwartz, what you're saying. It's that area could be impacted, and we may need to address the infrastructure issues out there, and we can do that. So that's the good news on that. The state of California actually mandates us to increase our housing units in the city and update them on an annual basis. So they're kind of the driving force on development, if you look at it that way. As far as the freeway, I mean, it's atrocious. I mean, I wish I could wave a magic wand and we could do some good stuff, but Caltrans is like, we're the worst bureaucracy in the United States. I mean, it's just horrible to deal with them. We're going to have the HOV lane coming through our city now. They just had the groundbreaking last week, and that's going to create even more traffic. So the solutions there need to really be addressed by our state legislature, and unfortunately, as much input as we can give, and we do. The only thing we were successful on was the flyover ramp on the 605 and the 10 freeway. That's going to be built, and that took 7 or 8 years. So, but I do think the project is a good project. I think it'll be a successful project for the city of West Covina. So with that, we have a resolution. City Clerk, would you read the resolution?
That's Resolution 201374, a resolution of the City Council of the City of West Covina, California, certifying the mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact for zone change 1303, tentative track map 72320, and tree removal permit 1305 pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act of 1970 as amended.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Spence and second by Councilmember Sykes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Okay, the Planning Commission and Planning staff further recommend City Council introduce the following ordinance. City Clerk.
It's the introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of West Covina approving zone change number 1303.
Do we have a motion?
Motion that we approve.
Motion by Sykes. Second?
I second.
Second by Toma. This is to introduce. All those in favor say aye. Yes, go ahead.
This is on, we're talking about item number 12, right?
11.
11 also.
Yeah, we're still on 11. There was a second part to it. Okay, we have a motion by Sykes, seconded by Toma. All to introduce. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries 4-1. Okay, now we're on item 12. Okay, item 12 is the public hearing on the code amendment number 1303, residential agricultural single-family zone development standards, a general exemption. This matter set for public hearing consists of an amendment to Chapter 26 of the West Covina Municipal Code relating to residential agricultural single-family zone development standards. City Clerk, will you verify proper legal notice has been given?
Yes, that's verified.
This time I shall open the public hearing on code amendment number 1303. There will first be the presentation of the staff report. Then we shall hear from those in favor of the proposal, then those opposed. City Manager, who will do the staff report?
Mr. Anderson will present the staff report.
Thank you. On May 7, 2013, the City Council initiated a code amendment to study the residential agricultural / single-family zone development standards. And they also established a moratorium on 79 vacant properties located in the South Hills subdivision. This is a graphic. It's kind of hard to see the gray areas, but hopefully you can make them out. I can cover them if we need to. The 79 lots are all vacant lots that were part of a larger subdivision that was originally subdivided in the 1980s, the early 1980s. Since that subdivision was created 30 years ago, staff had concerns with issues that were not covered by the conditions when the tracts were approved. The lots in the area are in hilly terrain and have varied topography. The moratorium was adopted to allow the evaluation of current development standards prior to the development of the vacant lots. Over the past few years, staff has been contacted by prospective developers soliciting information on possible development of the number of vacant lots in South Hills area. Based on the topography of the area and on concerns expressed regarding some current development standards, staff compiled a list of development standards that had been questioned. This list was presented to the City Council and was a basis for the code amendment and moratorium. And this is the list of the 6 standards that were originally were the 6 standards to be reviewed in regards to this code amendment. First 5 are standards which are for hillside properties, and the last one is basically a standard that would affect any property, whether it's in the hills or in a flatland neighborhood. And I'll just go through these quickly without going through all the information. Number 1, the ratio of pad size to floor area. Should there be a zoning standard that requires a ratio between the pad size and the floor area of a house? Number 2, appropriate pad size. The question is whether the pad sizes on the lots are appropriate in size or should they be larger for level open space around the houses. Number 3, number of stories. Is the current municipal code standard for measuring building height and number of stories appropriate for hillside lots? Number 4, standards and review process for decks and balconies. The question is whether the current zoning standards and review process for decks are appropriate. 5, common area maintenance for drainage and landscaping of slopes. Whether there should be some type of requirement for common area maintenance of drainage and or landscape improvements on the slopes. And lastly, number 6, standards for covered parking. The question is whether current standards for required covered parking are appropriate. In order to study these standards, the Planning Commission held 3 study sessions, one in July, one in August, and one in October. At these study sessions, the Planning Commission evaluated potential changes to the municipal code and determined not to recommend any changes to 3 of the 6 issues. Those 3 issues that they recommended no change for are appropriate pad size, building height, number of stories, and lastly, common area maintenance for drainage and landscaping of slopes. The determination regarding appropriate pad size and common area maintenance was due to the fact that the tentative and final maps were approved in the South Hills area many years ago, and any zoning code changes would not affect those properties. The determination regarding the number of stories was due to the fact that West Covina currently has a low maximum height limit of 25 feet, which is one of the lowest in the area. Most have 30 or 35 foot height limits. And the current method of measurement has been used for most houses constructed in West Covina. So based on that direction, Planning Commission the Planning Commission directed staff to prepare a code amendment which changes the code for the 3 remaining items. The code for ratio of pad size to floor area, standards and review process for decks, and standards for covered parking. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on November 26, 2013, at which time they voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the proposed code amendments to City Council. So these 3 before you on the screen tonight are the proposed changes. First, ratio of pad size to floor area. The current code has no standard requirements for ratio of pad size. The proposed code amendment would not establish a pad size ratio, but rather would require a level area in the rear of the house between the slope and the house, and that would be a 10-foot level area, and single-story open patio covers would be allowed in that area. Secondly, standards and review process for decks. The code currently allows for decks and balconies in the same manner as it allows for room additions. However, decks and balconies can have a greater effect on privacy than room additions. And that discussion we just had in the previous project, where in a room addition or when you build a house, you can put a wall up, you can put view obscuring windows, you can put an elevation with no windows, but that's not possible on a deck or a balcony generally, especially a deck where the whole purpose is for view. So the proposed code requires a 50% greater side yard setback for decks and balconies than the standard side setback, and requires a minimum 25-foot rear setback, which is a requirement for a second story. Lastly, standards for covered parking. The municipal code currently requires a 2-car garage for all single-family houses, no matter what size. The proposed code requires a 3-car garage when the floor area of a house exceeds 4,500 square feet or has 5 or more bedrooms. The proposed code requires each covered space to be 10 by 20 and allows tandem garages to comply with the 3-car garage standard. So in effect, a tandem would be a 2-car garage with 1 tandem space behind the 2-car garage. The recommendation is for approval. These standards, while the discussion has centered much around the 79 lots that were alluded to earlier, it does affect all properties in the R1 zone. It's not just for those 79 lots. It's for all properties within the single-family or the agricultural zone, residential agricultural zone. The moratorium is currently in effect. If the City Council approves the proposed code amendment tonight, an ordinance to release the moratorium will be presented to the City Council at the time of the second reading of the ordinance, which is scheduled for January 21st, 2014. The moratorium would then be released on the date that the code amendment takes effect, which is 30 days after the second reading. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? I do have one question. It says on the garages that it requires a 3-car garage. Are they allowed to build 4-car garages?
They would, yes, they can always build in excess of the requirement.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Worcester.
On the decks, we have some lots that don't back up to anything, or they back up to a hillside, so we have a huge amount of space, or if a deck was to go out, if there's a house way up, it's not going to affect anything. This ordinance doesn't seem to allow to have a bigger deck in those instances. If we don't do something tonight, would they then have to come back and ask for an individual wanting to build, or once they've built a house, what would be the process they would have to go through? What would that cost them, and would it be better to change that tonight?
And that would be a policy question that would be up to the City Council. But I believe, I'll give an example, and you let me know, Councilmember Warshaw, if I'm on the right track here. There are some areas up in the foothills, the San Jose Hills on the south side of town, where there are landscape maintenance districts. So you might have a situation where, and a lot of times what you have is a canyon, basically, and the house is overlooking the canyon. So there's nobody below them. There may be people beside them, but there's nobody below them. And sometimes they're up against 2 sides, so one side may be open and the other side there may be a house. So there's a lot of different circumstances that we find ourselves in, especially in the hillside areas. The code right now would require them to have, as recommended by the Planning Commission, would require them to meet that setback, no matter if there was an open space or vacant lot or something beside them. They'd be required to meet the setback. The remedy to that would be a variance, which the deposit for a variance right now is $2,500, and a review by the Planning Commission. Only the Planning Commission can approve a variance to not follow the code.
Right. So if we wanted to make it easier, not have it come back, not waste Planning Commission's time or the Planning Department's time, is it possible to change that tonight without slowing the process of approving this tonight?
It's my understanding that if you give us clear direction and we understand, we can prepare the code amendment and bring it back at the second reading with that wording.
I'm not sure how to read it, but that's what I would like to do, make it easier so that they can do that when there's nothing backed up to it, and it gives them the opportunity to get that view.
Why don't we listen to we have one speaker, and then after that we'll address some language if that's what the council wants to do. I'll open up the public hearing now, portion of the public comment portion of the public hearing. We have one speaker in favor, and that's Eric Scheck. Please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, City staff. My name is Eric Scheck. I'm here tonight representing Vandale Homes. I'm here tonight to speak in support of the code amendment. A little bit of history about our involvement and hopes in the city of West Covina. We purchased 22 of the lots in the South Hills area back in March of this year. Soon after, we learned that there was a moratorium that would prohibit us from moving forward on those lots. We since then met with city staff, attended various planning commission meetings to understand what the intent was with the moratorium and why the code amendment was being requested. And we worked diligently with staff to provide our input and in fact model our community, our 22 homes, to address those concerns being brought forth tonight. And we feel very comfortable that we've done a really good job of that with the 22 homes that we're proposing. It has been a financial hardship for us over the past 7 months to wait and not be able to move forward. We've worked really hard with our financial partners to not be deemed in default on our loan and our obligations to move forward and complete these homes. We are encouraged, though, that the code amendments being proposed tonight, which would, as Mr. Anderson stated, that it would then set in motion the events that would lead to the end of the moratorium. So for that reason, we support the code amendment tonight. I just want to thank the staff, the council, and Planning Commission for the opportunity to give input and be a part of this process. And we remain excited and motivated to build these 22 homes in the beautiful city of West Covina. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Warshak.
Question for you. What do you expect these homes to sell for, roughly?
We haven't set pricing yet, as the market changed a lot since we first went out and purchased the property. Hopefully to the benefit, but I don't have a set pricing as of yet.
Do you know roughly when you went into it what you thought the value would be?
Definitely over $1 million.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That's the only speaker card I have, so I'm going to close the public comment portion of the public hearing. I'll open it up to council discussion. Any discussion? Councilmember Spence.
Yes, I understand completely why, obviously, the person that wants to develop those homes wants to have the code amendment approved and beyond, and get building the homes. I understand that. My question is, what happens if this fails tonight? If there's not support for this, then is there a way to just end the moratorium? Obviously I'm new to the council, but I'm one who did not support the moratorium in the first place. And so is there a way to lift the moratorium without approving this?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm trying to recall, Jeff, if you can help me, in terms of the timeline, are we up against either the first 45 days or anything beyond that?
No, the moratorium was established for a year, basically up until May of 2014.
Okay. What we would have to do then, Mr. Mayor, is bring back if you do not approve this evening, then the alternative motion would be to bring back a request since it's not on your agenda tonight, to rescind the moratorium.
So we can do both at our next meeting. Too, can we not? This could be approved, and we can also lift the moratorium at our next meeting?
Yes. If this is approved, this is the introduction of the ordinance. It's not the final action.
I understand that.
So you would have it back for second reading in any event, and then it would not take effect for a 30-day period thereafter.
But what about lifting the moratorium? How fast could that be done?
You could do that at your very next meeting.
And then there would be that 30-day wait does not apply, correct?
Well, the 30-day wait for the introduction of the ordinance applies. The 30-day period for the revocation of the moratorium does not. It occurs the moment you revoke the moratorium.
So then someone could be building faster if the moratorium was revoked at our next meeting. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that is correct.
Okay, Councilmember Sykes.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. I didn't support the moratorium, and I would just simply support whatever is most expeditious. To me, these are luxury homes, and that type of housing stock, and those who can build and afford it, they have lots of adjustments and the ability to make those adjustments. So I'm sure, just like Mr. Scheck said, we're ready. They've already adjusted to what you have, and they can put those 22 homes up and they can comply with what you have. So I'm for stopping the moratorium and the delay simply because I know these folks are flexible and ready to go, and the quality of our community, I think it's going to be enhanced by what's offered by the 79 homes being put in place. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Councilor Warshaw.
I never supported the moratorium, and I wish it hadn't taken the 7 months it's already taken. That being said, though, I think what the planning department has done helps to protect the hillside a little more. We're only looking at an extra 30 days. And so I think it meets everything. The developer doesn't seem to have a problem with that extra 30 days. We've done all of this work. Every developer that comes in for anything else in our hillsides or the R1 area will know what those requirements are, and makes for a better project. I don't think at this point in time we want to just say, well, let's throw all that out because I want to speed it up. I don't think 30 days would make that much of a difference. The only thing I would like is to be able to put in what I requested, and I would think staff would be able to accomplish that.
Councilmember Toma.
So just a question of clarification. It sounded like some people think that the proposed construction of the houses already meets the planned changes. Is that correct? And if that is the case, then can we go ahead and do what Councilman Spence suggested at the next time and not have any impact one way or the other in terms of the 22 homes that are being built?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the answer to that is yes. I mean, the application as it comes in for construction of a project is at the point in time, and whatever standards that are applicable at that point in time would apply. Now, I think what really is happening if the project developer is saying, I recognize these are the standards you want to build to, and even though those standards are not in place, but they are amenable to adhering to those standards, there's nothing that prevents them from doing so.
I also want to be clear that
I want to question
there is, if the moratorium is lifted, the applicant still has to go to Planning Commission with a slew of entitlements, administrative use permits, conditional use permits, and variances, and what's called subcommittee review. That's a subcommittee of the Planning Commission for the design of the houses. So even lifting the moratorium doesn't automatically mean they can go start pulling permits. There's still that process to go through, and I believe as Mr. Glassman was pointing out, I think what the applicant was intending to say is that we'd be willing to abide by those, even if the moratorium was lifted, we'd be willing to abide by those as part of those conditions of those other entitlements that have to go to Planning Commission, which are also appealable to the City Council. So I don't know if that's helpful or more confusing, but.
Jeff, just one question. You know, when you look at the garage, I believe that the code, if we didn't have the moratorium in place, we did away with it, they could build two-car garages on a 4,500 square foot home, which I think is just not something we want to see. I don't think they would do it, but I do think that our code should address that. Now, the standard for the garages, is that throughout the entire hillside now, or is it just for these homes?
For the three-car garage?
Yes.
It will be throughout the whole city.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you're building a 4,500 square foot home, you shouldn't be allowed to build a two-car garage. That to me takes away the moratorium argument right there. I mean, do you want to drop it? So anyway, that's my feeling.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Warshaw.
If I could make one more comment. I would agree with you because this just doesn't affect the 22 homes. This affects throughout the city in an R1 agricultural area. So we have to look at the big picture. This really doesn't slow the developer down at all because if we approve this tonight, they know it's 30 days and they can start their application process right now. So it doesn't slow them at all to get their requirements. Am I correct on that?
I'm sorry, doesn't it have to be approved at the next meeting? And then it's 30 days after the next meeting, they can actually do the stuff for the Planning Commission, is that correct?
Let me indicate it in this fashion, if I can, Mr. Mayor. You have existing standards that are being requested to be considered for amendment. You have a moratorium that prohibits construction until these standards are put in place. It doesn't preclude the developer from applying under these new standards, so that even though there is the moratorium in place, and once that is finally lifted, a developer is not going to be slowed down, because they know if you introduce the ordinance tonight, unless there's a shift or a change from the council's position at your second reading, that's going to be the law in West Covina within 30 days after the second reading.
But lifting the moratorium means they can apply 30 days earlier, correct?
They can apply now.
They can apply now, but it wouldn't be approved.
Well,
because there's a moratorium in place.
Technically correct, but they won't get through that process anyway.
So the timeline a little bit, to be helpful on the timeline, they have submitted their applications that I was referring to, the entitlements that have to go to Planning Commission, they have submitted those. We are working with them to get a complete package. We have been working with them for most of the year. So that hasn't been done in a vacuum. We haven't stopped that. We're continuing to work on that. That's part of what Mr. Scheck was talking about. Once they get that approved, we have worked with the City Attorney's Office and understand that after the second reading is done, we can schedule that anytime we want to, even before the 30 days is up. We won't approve any building permits till the 30 days is up, but it will take some time to review those. We have to notice it for a public hearing. We have to have it, and then there's an appeal period after that hearing. So you're talking about a 30, 40-day window right there. So I understand the issue, whether or not it's rescinded or not, that's really a decision of the City Council at this stage. It probably, in my guesstimation, it probably won't change the tracking of the project very much. But it certainly was within the purview of the City Council to do that.
Mr. Anderson, what's the soonest you think you could bring this to Planning Commission?
We've talked to the applicant about the second meeting in January, the first meeting in February of the Planning Commission. Let me be clear. There's still some things that they need to provide to us. They don't have a complete application. So there's a few things they need to provide to us, but I feel confident in working with them. We met with them last week. I feel confident we're going to be able to get there at that time period.
Okay.
Well, I guess, I don't know when the right time is, but I would like to see agendized on our January meeting, lifting the moratorium. Regardless of what happens with this, if it passes or not with Mr. Warshaw's thing, I'd like to agendize something that would lift the moratorium at our next meeting.
Okay, why don't, do you want to make that a motion?
Okay, is that what I need to do?
I think if we're going to do multiple paths here, we probably should make a motion to do that. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I just have, since we don't have a motion on the floor, we can bring that up right now.
What's that?
I did not hear the question.
Can we bring up to
for the next meeting
to get rid of the moratorium at the next meeting and still go ahead with what we're doing now?
Yeah.
The answer to that is yes. Yes.
Okay.
The only reason that you cannot act on the moratorium tonight is it's not on your agenda.
Correct.
The Brown
Okay.
Act would preclude that.
So do you want to make a motion to bring that back?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we agendize lifting the moratorium at our next scheduled meeting.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Moved by Spence, second by Warshaw. Council Member Sykes. You okay? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. So that's a 4-1. Now, do we have any direction on an ordinance that we want to bring back to?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to bring the ordinance back the way it was suggested by the Planning Department, with the exception of the lots that overlook the valleys.
Yes, here's what my suggestion would be, without looking at an aerial to see what kind of situations there might be in those locations, is where house backs up to open space, basically permanent open space area, golf course, country club, park, or landscape maintenance district. There may be other similar types of uses that are out there, but basically permanently open space that there's not ever going to be houses built on. So that would be the list. I'd put something together in a list like that, and I'll bring it back, and we'll try to clarify that at your second reading.
Is that what you want?
Mr. Mayor, is what I'm proposing.
Okay, I'll second that.
And that's for introducing the ordinance as amended.
As
Okay,
amended.
so then we'll call for a heading of the ordinance, and then we'll take a motion and a vote.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of West Covina amending Chapter 26 of the West Covina Municipal Code related to residential architectural single-family zone development standards as amended.
Okay, and with the amendment, Councilmember Warshaw made a motion, and I made a second, so that is before us to introduce. All those in favor, well, do we want a roll call, or can we do it without a roll call? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That's a 4-1. Okay, next item on the agenda is Community Services Department, the award of bid for the City of West Covina fixed route and dial-a-ride transit services. City Manager, do you have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'll start off, and then I will be handing this off to Chris Freeland. On April 18, 2013, the Community Service Department issued an RFP for the fixed services and the dial ride. They did receive 3 proposals in which, for a 3-year term, and Chris Freeland will go more into the RFP. But just to summarize this, the Community Services then went out and asked for a 5-year figure in order to look at the overall financial exposure and cost of the project. And the results are being presented here tonight. So currently the city staff is recommending MV Transportation for an amount not to exceed $4.9 million over the 5 years. And I just want to point out that Southland Transit has, as far as staff is concerned, has been an exceptional service provider. We haven't had any issues with them, and this recommendation is based upon the financial aspects of the RFP. And however, this council, as you know, can make a decision based upon other factors, which includes known dealings with the current contractor. However, I believe that's important for us to go through the actual RFP and actually the terms of the agreement in order for this council to make a decision. So if I can have Chris Freeland go ahead and follow up with that aspect.
Thank you, Mr. Chung. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, before you tonight is the awarded bid for the City of West Covina's fixed route bus service and dial-a-ride transit service. Since 2001, Southland Transit has provided exceptional, consistent, and reliable service to the City of West Covina's bus shuttle and dial-a-ride programs, and they do have some wonderful employees working for them. For those of you not familiar with the city's transit services, there are 3 bus alignments, the red, blue, and green lines, that operate Monday through Friday with over 104,000 annual riders per year. The dial-a-ride operates Monday through Fridays and part of Sunday with over 23,000 annual passengers. The cost of the transit services are fully funded by Proposition C and Measure R transportation funds and revenues collected from patrons. There are no general fund dollars utilized in this program. These services were last reviewed in 2006, and with the expiration of the agreement, the city initiated a new request for proposals on April 18, 2013. The RFP, as Mr. Chung indicated, called for a 3-year cost proposal to operate the bus and shuttle dial-a-ride services. On May 6, 2013, the city conducted a pre-proposal bidders conference for the purpose of answering questions and to clarify any details in the RFP. An addendum to the RFP was presented to all potential bidders, responding to questions received from those bidders. On May 23, 2013, the city received bids from 3 companies, MV Transportation, First Transit, and Southland Transportation. The 3 bidders were then invited to an interview on June 5, 2013. Based on the strength of the 3 proposals received and an interest to further reduce the annual cost of the city staff contacted bidders to obtain a best and final offer for a 5-year term, with the city's option to extend for 2 additional years, 1 year at a time. As part of this review process, the city utilized an independent review by Moore & Associates as the city's transit consultant to assist with the RFP review process to ensure compliance with the RFP, assist in evaluation of the proposals and scoring of the interviews, confirm that the service levels and staffing levels being proposed by a successful bidder address the needs of the community, that the proposed fleet is adequate to support the desired plan, to ensure that the compensation for the drivers and other employees is comparable. Based on the proposal submitted in the performance of the interviews, findings and recommendations of Moore and Associate, and proposed costs, city staff is recommending our MV Transportation as the recommended bidder. Just for a little background on MV Transportation, they are one of the largest transit agencies in the United States, locally operating in many communities here, including Arcadia, Whittier, La Mirada, Paramount, Santa Monica, Monterey Park, Beverly Hills, and Burbank. If approved tonight, MV will begin service on March 3rd, 2014, which will give them time to purchase brand new fleet of vehicles, both the bus lines, or excuse me, the buses for the shuttle system, as well as the dial-a-ride system as well. MV will pay for all branding of those vehicles, meaning all the city logos as well and decals or bus wraps that we do put those to signify that that is part of West Covina's transit system. MV Transit has provided the lowest bid of $4,953,125, which is approximately $990,625 per year for the 5-year term. With any new contract for services, there's always concern of the new provider coming into a community and potentially raising their costs. MV has provided a guarantee to the city that their cost to provide service will not exceed their proposal during those five years. In addition, should the city wish to cancel that agreement, the city of West Covina would be refunded the last 12 months of profit earned by MV. That is something that they put in their proposal. As this is a proposal for professional services, City Manager Mr. Chung has already addressed that the City Council is not required to select the lowest bidder. If the City Council believes another vendor can provide a superior service, the City Council has the authority to accept that proposal of that vendor. Tonight, City staff is recommending City Council take the following actions. 1, accept the bid of MV Transportation in the amount not to exceed the $4.953, million over 5 years. Authorize City Manager to finalize the terms of the transit service agreement with MV. 3, authorize the City Manager and the City Clerk to execute a transit service agreement for the services outlined in the request for proposals. This includes City staff report. A representative from Moore and Associate, the city's transit consultant, is available for any questions, as well as representatives from MV Transport are here as well.
Okay, is that it? That's it, sir. Okay, thank you. Any questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Warshaw.
Did this originally go out as a 3-year or a 5-year?
It went out in the RFP originally as a 3-year, but based on the results that were received and the opportunity to spread the cost for the new transit fleet, we asked them to provide a 5-year agreement to help reduce our costs over that period.
And did it reduce it?
It did.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? The new contractor that you're recommending, I had heard that they were for sale. Is that something that you had heard?
If I could, I'll ask Joe Escobedo to step forward. He's with MV Transportation. He'll be able to answer some of those questions.
Okay.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's on.
Staff and also the audience. Let me clarify, MV is not for sale. Let me also tell you where that rumor probably started. There are investors that want to participate and get involved with MV, and so that's where that rumor started. But let me be very clear, and they want to diversify their portfolio, obviously, and try to invest in our company and join in on our success, but we are not for sale.
Are you publicly traded?
No, we are a private company. We are still owned by the original founders of our firm.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, with that, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Warshaw.
So moved to accept the bid from MV Transportation.
Okay, motion by Warshaw. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Toma. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll say no.
I oppose.
Well, Councilmember Sykes opposes too, so it'll be a 3-2. Okay. With that, we'll move on to Mayor, Council Member reports. Any reports from any council members? I have Councilmember Spence.
I just have 2 items that I'd like to, I guess, looking over the rules for the City Council on how to bring items up, and when I spent time, there's 2 things I wanted to bring up. One is something that I had promised to do, which was to have discussion on whether or not the City Council would approve an ordinance that would preclude council members from participating in CalPERS. I know I declined to participate in CalPERS, but that is an ordinance or amendment to an ordinance. And the second thing I want to talk about was the gun buyback program that's coming up, because I noticed it in Discover West Covina, and I know there's lots of studies that show that gun buyback programs don't necessarily reduce gun crime, because the best way to do that is to lock up criminals that use guns. But and usually most of the guns are either not serviceable or old, etc. But my concern was the statement in there saying that no questions would be asked. And either unintentionally or intentionally, that gives the opportunity for guns to be given in West Covina that we would pay for that could have been used in a crime and could be evidence in a crime and could be destroyed. And, that was of great concern to me, and I didn't know if, I know in touring the police department today, apparently some detectives actually agree with that as well. And so I don't know if, we need to revisit that issue and whether or not there's other ways to deal with it or whether or not it's worth going on at this point.
Okay, those are two items we can put on the agenda. Right. Just so everybody understands, we have a policy where we do like a mother may I.
That's what it is.
Okay, yeah, and then if the council, 3 people in the council want to do it, then we don't spend, we go forward.
I get that.
Okay, so those 2 will be brought back to the next council meeting as a mother may I. Any other comments, council?
I did have one question. Councilmember Spence, are you looking to stop this buyback, or are you looking at future, and how long would this kind of report take to get back?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that I don't know. And so that's one of the reasons I think I need to do Mother May I. I mean, I don't think I would have voted for the gun buyback program because of the studies that show it's ineffective. I think there's better ways to spend resources, but the previous councils did that. But I do have concerns about either someone unintentionally or intentionally actually giving a weapon to the police that they're going to destroy, saying no questions asked, that had been used in the commission of a crime. And I think that is a concern.
Can I ask staff?
When is the buyback taking place?
And can we get a report before that?
It's occurring January 19th, I believe.
Oh, maybe not.
25th? Well, 25th. So we have time to bring it back.
Okay.
At the second meeting in January.
Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, good. Any other comments, questions? Councilmember Toma?
I have a comment, yeah. One of the issues that had come up in our campaigns also, thank you, and was obvious, and even obvious today, is that, the city attorney position is one of the most important positions that we have in our city, probably second only to the city manager. And I think we owe it to the public to make sure that we are getting, the best quality services for the lowest price. And I believe that we should request an RFP to go out there to make sure that we are getting exactly that. So I don't know the exact procedure for starting that process, but
RFP for what?
To do an RFP for the city attorney position. Yeah.
That's a Mother May I, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Okay.
We'll get that on there. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Shaw.
One other Mother May I. One of the things that I had said during my campaign, and I mentioned when I was sworn in, was looking at the campaign finance laws. So I would like that looked at into finding ways to tighten that up. I think I had given a suggestion of some cities, but I'm sure there are other cities besides that, and I would like that to be looked at.
Okay, we'll bring that back as a Mother May I. Any other items? Going to be busy. Okay. Council comments, any comments? We're kind of moving down here to adjournments. I've got a couple of adjournments. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn our meeting in memory of the following individuals: longtime resident Lilia Salazar, who's the mother of Bill Salazar, from our tow company, Royal Coaches, and Daniel Diaz, West Covina resident and youth pastor of the New Beginning Community Ministries in Baldwin Park. I'll make a motion to adjourn in their memory. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Sykes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.